I've come to the middle of the Somerset levels, and luckily we're on a mound here, more about which in a second, but this is traditionally the boglands and marshlands and even lake that is traditionally associated with this area. So over here we've got the Isles of Avalon, the Glastonbury Tor. This is the last refuge point of defending England from the invaders, the Vikings and so forth. King Alfred came down here to plot how he was going to get back at the Viking enemy. So Somerset has a lot of strategic value for the defence of the realm. And actually, where we are right now is Fenny Castle. You wouldn't really know it's a castle. It does look like a man-made mound. And here is the man, Simon, who knows a lot more about it. Simon, where are we?
Okay, we're in Fenny Castle by Wookey, just outside the city of Wells. Behind us you can see Glastonbury, which I'm sure we'll show you in a minute. But as you say, we've got a panoramic view over the Somerset levels, which at one time would have been probably underwater for the large part of it, certainly boggy. And Fenny, the word fen obviously means marsh, marshy. So yeah, this was a defensive castle, which has largely been forgotten, and three of us are working very hard to bring it back to relevance and to sort of show people locally and a bit further afield as well about some of the hidden and forgotten history in this region, because it was pivotal. It was absolutely pivotal in English, British history.
When was it last a castle?
Okay, well, yes, that's tricky. We've got records going back to 1200 that showed habitation. We've got records going back to 1400 that showed that there were clear walls defined on the bailey, which is the bigger part of the castle over there. The locals, however, how should we say, redistributed a lot of the stone. So what there is now is underneath the surface of the ground, and we're hopeful, well, we're not hopeful, we are going to have Bristol University down in the not too distant future to do some geophys on the area in front of the castle, which is not scheduled.
Well, Tony Robinson's lot won't be far behind.
But more the merrier, you know.
There's epochs of castle building in England. There's epochs of castle dissolving, if that's the right way of putting it. Where does this sort of rank in what you know so far? Was it a Norman-built castle after the Battle of Hastings and the conquest? And did it come down in the what's known as just after the anarchy in the 12th century?
Yeah, I know you know your history. I know that's one of your subjects. But yes, it does. It's hidden in the mystery of time to a certain extent, and that's one of the things we're keen to do. So yeah, we're going to try and uncover its history. Personally, I think it was a Roman fortified hill. And the reason I say that is because a very eccentric vicar in about 1823 had a dig and had a look at a few things, and he found some very solid mortar and some very big stones and a proper wall. Now, if that was to have happened after the Battle of Hastings in 1066, there would be records, because it takes power and money to do that, and we can't find any.
Now, it's not in Doomsday?
No. Well, no, not really. I'll come back to that one. But yeah, I think it was Roman. I think they fortified it to protect the mineral hills of the Mendips, or maybe as a garrison taxation thing for the traffic passing between here and Glastonbury. If it was Roman and we can prove it, that would add a huge amount of extra history to this area. What I think happened then is the Romans went, the Anglo-Saxons did their thing. You mentioned King Alfred. This land to the right is actually King Alfred's home manor. This is where he grew up. This is his.
So we're at the heart of Wessex here.
Absolutely, and we know it was his because he left it to his son Edward in the will, and we've got copies of that still. And he mentions the Fenny lands and between here and Brent Knoll. So this, in about 900 or whenever Alfred was the epicentre of the universe, really. And he would have visited here because he was very interested in Roman things. He'd been to Rome as a youngster. So, in theory, well, not really in theory, you can almost say that he would have walked here and had a look. I think what happened then is it sort of got left for a while until the Normans arrived. Normans saw a big fortified hill and thought, well, this is too good to be true. But it's not their usual design. So what they did is they cut this ditch here, made it into the classic Motte Bailey.
Yeah, we've actually got two mounds here. So that's the Bailey. That's where the actual fortress would have.
No. Fortress would have been on both.
Yeah.
What you would have had in there is armoury, granary, the important bits and pieces, day-to-day goings on. This would have been the lord of the castle and his small retinue. What the Normans used to do was, if they were attacked, the last place to fall would have been this, because they would come across a bridge, pulled up the drawbridge, defended it, and held out.
Anyone trying to come across would have
absolutely
missiles and
absolutely massacred. And we think the main way in is down there. There's a really deep V-shaped valley, which militarily lends itself to being defended.
And this is quite clearly man-made as a feature, isn't it?
Oh, very much so.
So let's just explain what the Normans were doing. Is they would throw up earthworks, put a wooden fortress on it, and then over the course of time, these were replaced by stone and became more sophisticated.
Arundel, Windsor, all of these big castles, you'll notice that there's a large, lumpy hill, for want of a better description. That's the motte. That's what we stood on here. Only they turned it to stone. This one they didn't bother with. I think it was probably in use until the anarchy, and of course this area was Matilda largely.
So what we should say about the anarchy was because of the sort of problematic Norman way of deciding who was going to be king, there was a divide between the daughter of Henry I, who was Matilda, and no woman had ever reigned in her own right. So there was a gender thing about. There was a challenge.
How possibly could a lady rule?
Well, she was.
She did quite a good job, though.
She was acknowledged as the queen, but it didn't last. King Stephen was the nephew of the previous king, so they had a right dust up,
and
which
actually
part of the world basically led to mini fiefdoms, lords, landlords misbehaving themselves, and real chaos, which is the important reign of Henry II. So that a lot of the castles were pulled down after that.
I don't think this was attacked. I think basically it wasn't strategically relevant. He went up onto the Mendips, Stephen, and he marched past Richmond, I think it was called there.
Yeah.
He marched past the castle and sort of waved at the Matilda garrison, made this big point of marching past, and they went after him, and he went round the corner and back behind him, burned the castle to the ground. Right. This one fared better. However, the Mad Vicar I mentioned earlier, when they did some work at the front here, one of the farmers quarried away the part of the front to get some stones, and what they found was a load of skeletons, literally 18 to 20 feet below the surface of the ground at the front. Now, what on earth would they be doing 18 to 20 feet below the ground? That's far too deep for a burial. So what you've got is a buried burial. And what I think happened is that was a Briton or a Roman type thing, although they were buried apparently north-south, which means that they were probably maybe Britons, ancient Britons. When the Normans dug the ditch and plonked it up here, the earth up here, they really buried the burials. So there is so much here to find out,
Well, I want to bring it up to date. Come over here, because I want to just explore a little bit about what you're doing now. And down here, as you told me earlier, we've got the grass cutters.
Maybe we look taller than you, Dominic, for a change.
You've got the grass cutters doing their work.
Yeah.
But then you've got this tent here and a kind of enclosure.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you're keen that this is essentially an educational project.
Absolutely.
So what is it that you're up to now?
Okay, as you know, I'm a doctor of education. I normally teach police and people law and stuff like that. This is a complete departure for me, but it's back to the roots of the joy of teaching. So we invite the schools, and what we have is basically a medieval village in the making, working in conjunction with Historic England, and reenactors and people like that, historians, Bristol University. I think Stoke College also are going to come and play. Anyway, we've got lots of people interested in coming and helping. Lots already have. And we're trying to build a medieval village where, again, the youngsters can come and see history, touch it, feel it, understand it better. Also, the reenactors, they're very knowledgeable, so we want to share that. And with that and the castle in the background, we want to bring the subject far more to life. We've done it with the youngsters and they've absolutely loved it, so it works.
Tell me more about the reenactments. This is when historic kind of episodes of the past are reenacted of a Sunday afternoon.
At the moment I've got Draco, which is the Vikings from Glastonbury, which are a great bunch. They come and do Viking stuff here, and actually there were Vikings wandering around this part of the world, so that's fairly accurate. We've got the Saxons too. That's a group called Regia. We've got different groups that come and visit, the Vikings mostly. There's also another interesting development, which is this was a military establishment. This was a castle, fortified military establishment. One of my other interests is working with Alpha Company Royal Marine Cadets, and I'm talking with them at the moment about helping to teach the land skills, fieldcraft skills here at the castle. so they can practice things like, you know, camouflage and stalking and all this.
And
sort of
those are
stuff.
kind of transferable skills.
They
as well,
are.
So it's going to
and, you know,
help
it's
them
a
progress.
lovely
Yeah.
juxtaposition between the ancient Vikings and
Nice.
the modern, you know, future commando Alpha Company Royal Marine Corps cadets. So, you know, it's great.
Listen, you've got a great thing going on here.
Yeah.
What's the vision? If we come back in a couple of years' time, what's going to be going
The
on
vision
here?
for me personally is to live long enough to see it finish without killing myself in the process. There are 3 of us own this site. 2 of us do pretty much all the work on it. We've got a couple of volunteers who come and help with bits and pieces. David, you've seen,
And you're all
sitting on the hill.
volunteers, aren't you?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, if any, we do, I don't say plough money into it. It's not that bad, but we do subsidise the recovery of this ancient monument quite heavily. But that's fine. That's, you know, it's a legacy project. So what would I like to see? I'd like to see it be a regional thriving history hub. There are other ones in the area which do sort of mixed history as well, but we're not with the castle. You know, we've got a genuine bona fide castle on the doorstep. So we would like Somerset to embrace it, to help us. In fact, more than Somerset, we'd like the West Country to embrace this project and help us. We've got some possible sponsors coming online. If there are any more business sponsors that would like to...
Well, how do we find out more about this if people
Well,
want to get
either
involved?
phone me up. You can find me quite easily by Googling my name, Dr. Simon Selby. Quite a good profile on Google and Facebook and stuff. Or you can look for Fenny Castle, which is fennycastle.org.uk. Not Fenny Castle House. Please don't pester our neighbours. They're not us. But yeah, if you look for fennycastle.org.uk, that's us. Or just phone me up. You know, it's all very casual. We don't get... we're not, you know, hyper academic about it all. We're all... It's a big family, the volunteers that come here. They invited me to their festival at Christmas with lots of mead and stuff. That was such good fun, you know. And of course the Marines I'm playing with on a regular basis anyway. But yeah, and we've got a few volunteers that regularly turn up. My Polish contingent come down and play. You know, it's a happy place. In fact, it has got, you know, I'm not into the vibe thing with Glastonbury in the distance. I probably shouldn't say that, but it does have a really good vibe here. You know, it feels nice.
Well, people having fun.
Yeah,
Constructing
and you're
something
back
positive.
into nature. You're living history, and actually, history is kind of what we're all made of and from. It permeates all of us. So you might as well take a bit of an interest. It's actually really quite interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And you look at how these ancient people lived, and it changes your perspective, and your worries and concerns kind of become more manageable, because you think, well, crikey, what I've got compared to them, maybe I need to have a rethink about this. They were very resourceful, very they would look to themselves to solve problems a lot of the time. Okay, in front of us you can see we've got the medieval village. The watchtower at the end is our newest acquisition. That was great fun trying to build that without plans. Absolute chaos, but we got there in the end. Down below you can see what we call the events field, or the parade ground, or whatever, where our woolly lawnmowers are doing their thing. We're very grateful to the guy who's put his sheep in here. It works well for him, works well for us. You can see the river at the front. The site is fully defended by rivers and ditches with water in them. In the background you can see the Somerset levels. It is a stunning view, and this is where absolutely everything was happening about 900 AD. You had Guthrum, the Danish warlord, being christened at Wedmore, or down that neck of the woods. All of this stuff. Over there, the Polden Hills, which I personally think is where the Battle of Ethandune happened. That's only my personal thoughts. And then you've got Glastonbury, which of course is featured big in history, well, going back as far as you want to go, really. You can now see over there the Bailey part of the castle. As I say, there would have been a bridge joining the two, and round the part we stood on there would have been a big tower in the middle and a wooden palisade fence, about one person to every 8 foot of fence apparently. The Bailey would have been full of, you know, granary horses, people going about their day-to-day existence, and all of the green flatlands would have probably been marshy or even underwater. City of Wells over to the left with the Mendip transmitter. You can see the Mendip Hills. In fact, you've got a really good view of the quarry today. I think that's Dulcott, but I'm not sure. But it's certainly over in the general Sheptonish direction. And then the Mendip transmitter, which most people from the Mendips will recognise immediately. Then the gap in the hills going through to Wookey Hole, and behind it what they used to refer to as the Mineral Hills. In fact, when Wells was founded, the guy who founded it said something along the lines of part of the reason for finding it was to protect the area from the troublesome Cornish. I apologise to the Cornish. By that they meant everybody who lived west of here. So that would have been the Irish, the Cornish and everybody else. So yeah, it was all part of defensive stuff. My friend Stuart Pryor, who's you see on Digging for Britain and stuff, he's one of the leads on medieval history from Bristol University. He seems to think that this might have been something to do with portage on the rivers. So they would bring materials through the rivers, which are the other side of the hill and this side, and that the castle here is a taxation pinch point for portage tax and to make sure, you know, people couldn't come up the river if they didn't want them to. So yeah, it is truly stunning. And when you see a sunset, the sunset is literally right over there, where you can see the power lines going off towards Bridgewater general direction. The sun is stunning. It's a huge sky, and you just see the whole of the sky lit up with the colours. And yeah, oh well, there's a sheep upside down. You do see the most peculiar things here. But yeah, and you wake up in the morning if you camp here and you see the mist, and it's really evocative. You think, well, any minute now someone from the 12th century is going to wander out with their cow, hopefully not with a few soldiers behind them. But yeah, it's really special.
It's fantastic looking into the past.
It is.
To see how we could kind of go about the present and look to the future.
Yeah.
Listen, you know, in conclusion, thank you so much for inviting us today. It's
You're
been
welcome anytime,
a pleasure to talk to you about this. Best of luck with it, and we'll come back.
Absolutely, please do. No, nice to speak to you.
Excellent.